What's up, everybody? A Sparrow with a Gun here from Sleepless Nights with another episode on the Space Reverse Engineers series. We are working today on the vanilla Warhammer build for 40k Hammer of Orion. I think I got that right. I don't really know. This is a pretty interesting build, though, especially being vanilla and being Warhammer, because Warhammer has some very unique ship designs to it. So it'll be kind of fun to dig into it and actually kind of see how the builder blended the ship design into the Space Engineers kind of building structure. So let's dive right in. Alright, so firstly, and probably most obviously, one of the big things that stands out in this build to me is all of these different little decorative type shapes. They're very simple. I was going to say fairly, but they're not even fairly simple. They're very simple. It's essentially just the 2x1 corners, the tips, that you've got two side by side and then two facing opposite directions on the bottom, and creating these kind of cool, I kind of liken them to arrowheads or spearhead type things. It does seem like there's one missing, but I don't know if that was on purpose or not. But yeah, then the other ones here that are not elevated, but they're kind of like over where they're merging into the ground, is basically just two tips put together. The big thing there is, oh, and this one's a diamond. That one's more of a diamond pattern. But the big thing here is color palette that makes them stand out, and placement, as well as these cool little, almost cathedral window type shapes. I think they're actually supposed to be more of a pillar, but if you look at it from an inset point of view, it kind of looks more like a cathedral window. But this is just two half blocks, I believe. Two half blocks put together with two 2x1 armor base ramps put together. And you could either view this as kind of a angled pillar or an archway window. It would just depend on what you're really trying to do. But when you put that together with the little arrowhead type shapes and then add a different color palette to everything, it kind of gives a lot of different detail and depth to different stuff. So that's kind of a cool little trick that's really not hard to do. And you can actually see these symbols kind of everywhere. Full disclosure, I probably should have mentioned this before for those of you that did not watch the Space Engineers Inspiration episode where this featured, but I have not actually really played Warhammer much. I've heard enough about it, been a gamer for long enough that I've heard about it for years, but never really actually played it or learned much about it. So there may be, like, this may be some kind of iconic symbol for a faction or something that I'm not aware of, and I'm butchering something. Apparently I made that mistake in my inspiration episode when I was talking about the picture in there. I mentioned something about it being the leader, probably, and I got a couple of comments about, like, how dare you insult the... I mean, they're all in good fun, not being serious, but it was just kind of funny. It was like, yeah, no, I'm probably walking all over the lore and storyline, but here nor there. This is not a Warhammer video, technically, so I feel like I'm okay. Another thing that I just noticed that I'd like to point out that's kind of unique to this one is this cool skull symbol. Again, it's probably part of the factions or something, probably an iconic logo or something, but it's a neat little touch. It's pretty cool. So this is done with a combination of ramps, it looks like. So we've got the solid blocks there, we've got the 2x1 ramps on top to give it a little rounded edge. Then when they've actually done here using the inverted corners, which is interesting. I believe that's the inverted corner anyway. Yeah. And then went to the standard corner and the standard inverted corner, back to regular steel blocks. But the eyes are interesting. It's an upside down 2x1 ramp with two base 2x1 ramps put together. And it makes a very convincing angry skull eye kind of look. So that's a pretty cool little trick. And that's not too difficult to pull off. And then they're using half blocks and the 2x1 ramp slopes tips to make kind of the skull teeth, with a half block to make the nose socket. So pretty cool. And then this thing over here is pretty neat too. It's got a wing type shape, and it's basically just staggered 2x1 ramps And then one in the middle here to give it a little bit of an angle. Or not in the middle, on the other side. So it gives this cool kind of wing effect. So that's pretty neat, and it's very simple. Again, it's just using a combination of ramps in different ways to make it kind of unique. Now this is kind of cool here too. Another example of these arrowhead things, but this one uses a slope on both sides to make it a little bit taller. I didn't see that anywhere else, so that's the first place I noticed that. That's pretty cool though. But yeah, there's a lot of little things. We've seen this before, this alternating use of half blocks and the ramp tips with the full ramp and the full blocks to give this alternating stagger depth kind of thing. It gives it kind of a grid column type of look. And this is interesting as well. So we've got the ramps coming this way, but then one's facing down, which gives it a little bit of an outward ramp, or an outward angle, but not as shallow as the top part. So it gives it a little bit more of a, almost a, I would liken it to almost a claw-like shape kind of thing, if that makes sense. What's really funny is I'm actually gesturing with my hands, like a claw, and then I realized you guys can't see that. This is a pretty cool thruster housing, I guess. I was going to say module, but it's not much of a module, it's more of a housing. This is kind of cool. So what's going on here? What block is this? So they're using the ramp tips here again with a half block. So same kind of idea, just with a bit more. There's 2 to 3 rows here, 2 on a large grid. So this is the standard ramp base with the standard block, and then using the tip and the half block to create the kind of like internal housing. And then it looks like they left it open. So if we were to remove this one and this one, you can see that they actually left it open. They didn't finish this design because it implies that it goes around. Actually, nope, I take that back. It does. Okay, they did go around with it on the outside. So you've got the ramp tips going one way, half block, another facing the other direction, and then this is the same pattern but on the bottom side, but they didn't fill it in on the inside to create a rounded edge on the inside so they could fit the thruster in here. And then this part is just, it looks like regular slopes with 2 ramp bases, and then what, a half slope with the... Now this is kind of a neat little trick too. So this is 4 armor, or 2x1 corner tips that are placed around to create kind of a pyramid shape. But what's interesting about this is when you put the base ramps here with the slopes, it would actually look a bit more like, well, we'll just clear it for a second here on this side. I know I'm breaking things, but this is reverse engineering. So this is what's interesting about this design. From here, this just looks like a slope slab in the middle, right? It doesn't really add much to it, but when you add this, now it looks like there's a full pillar inset, inlaid into this frame here. So it's a pretty neat little trick of giving an illusion that this is some kind of big spear pillar type thing, without actually having to build it that way. So that's kind of cool. Really like this. I really like this a lot because it gives a lot of unique design to the thrusters, and you can do it all throughout the ship, and it's like, oh, there's the thruster. They don't look like just a thruster pod kind of thing, which is really, really cool. So I definitely like that thruster design. It's really neat way of camouflaging the vanilla thrusters and making them look a lot cooler than they are typically. This is also kind of neat. This is more of a function over form thing, but I like the decoy blocks. I believe that's a decoy. Yep. Decoy blocks set to a merge block, so it would be kind of like chaff, and it looks like there's a bunch of them on here, so if you were under fire, you could kind of like launch a chaff barrage type of thing and just dump a bunch of decoys everywhere. Kind of a neat little trick. I like it. This emblem panel here, I'm just now realizing, is also a neat way to hide some thrusters there. It doesn't look like they did it all the way, or even on the bottom, actually, but on the top they did. So that's a cool little place to stick some thrusters back there. Let's see, what else? I do like this window Cathedral Hall type thing. It's really cool looking. We've seen this kind of stuff before where you put a window behind the armor and then do a standard slope and then like 2 standard slopes, and it gives this cool kind of like cutout type of thing. I do like it's a cross between like a cathedral circular window and like a TIE fighter cockpit window kind of thing, but the grid glass with the slope ring kind of thing. Pretty neat, pretty simple. But overall, I like this whole top section that turns into kind of this cathedral look. It's really, really cool. And up here you can see that they have a circular window here, but then up on the top to create a bit more of a shallow slope on the roof, they did the angles, the 2x1 ramps and the standard block. And I do like how the spiked arrowhead pieces stick up past the armor. I think it adds a lot of texture to it. It gives it a little bit more, like there's objects on it. It's not just painted on or something. That's pretty cool. Yeah, these turrets are really cool as well. This is very interesting and something that I probably should dig into at greater detail. So we're going to do that. It looks like it's using a exaggerated version of what we've seen in the past of using the 5x5 armor blast door ring to protect and be able to transition smoothly into a small grid is what it looks like, but I don't think it is. This 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, if I did my math right, who knows? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9. Okay, I'm not crazy. I did it right. So it's a 9, and what I can only assume is a 9x9. I could be wrong, but and then down here, I don't think this transitions to a small grid. I believe this is just to prevent it from damaging anything, because the blast door blocks have the altered collisions, so it allows you to get away with a lot more. So I'd like to actually cut this apart with function more than like making it look pretty. I'd really rather take a closer look at how they actually made this work. So it looks like we have, let's see if I can get through here. We have a rotor connected to conveyors. The conveyors then connect to yet another rotor, which connects to the conveyors of the system, or of the ship. There's a ring of blast doors, or blast blocks around the rotor so that it can rotate freely. That all makes sense. And then we've got some blast block here, which I'm guessing is for this section, because otherwise I don't see a reason for this to be here. Yeah, so this is for this vertical part to rotate without damaging anything. We've got a connector attached that goes up to other conveyors, or I said connections, I meant conveyors. Conveyors that run up to the rocket launchers. Okay. And I'm trying to get it around here. Gyroscope so you can control it, obviously, because that would be necessary. I'm guessing this is the remote block. So remote control there. Let's see if I can get out of here. And then from the top part, covering it in various different slope armors to make it look the way you want. And then out here on the housing part, covering it in half block, it looks like. Half block slope, and then the armor tip ramps. So there's your rocket launchers. And then on the outer edge, past the blast doors, or blast door blocks, then it's kind of, again, decorating it the way that you want. But overall, as a really safe custom turret design, if I am seeing everything correctly, because you're giving it enough space that it can move around and not damage stuff in pretty much all of the mobile parts, but then giving it enough room and making it big enough with the 3-barreled rocket launchers and everything to actually design it and conceal it and everything so it doesn't look like just a standard turret at all, or any kind of rotating rocket launchers kind of thing. It's actually, it really does look like its own custom turret design, as opposed to something like this that's the vanilla turret. So really cool on that part. I also like this like half ramp section here with it's like a pillbox type thing, where it's a little big for normal astronaut size, obviously, but I picture like people standing up right here on like the edge and shooting over it like it's a guard a turret. I can't think today. I can't think of words. What am I thinking of? Guard tower kind of thing. That's what I'm thinking of. Man. Alright, so on the bottom, we've got more of that alternating ramp design, which is pretty cool. Always a winner. One thing that I think is neat about this is they kind of merge it, going from... Actually, this is kind of different too, because it's a vertical. Most of the time you see this, it's horizontally staggered. This is done vertically, which is kind of unique and kind of interesting. But what's really cool is you see it kind of coming down, and then it goes back up, and then it comes back down again, and makes this kind of like cutout outcropping area where the turrets can go, which is pretty cool. The rest of it is a lot of the same stuff that we talked about, using the alternating ramps for different depths, though this is kind of cool that it's done up to this point, and then it uses half blocks just to kind of cut in so that it doesn't go around the thruster. Though, I have to admit, I'm a little surprised that this works. Okay, so it is just a cover-up. Okay, I was really thinking, for those of you that caught it, with the way this is cut out here, and it kind of runs into these other blocks, I was really thinking that this might actually be a hypergrid thing where you use like MC Edit to cut in stuff where it doesn't, where you circumvent the collision boxes. But it doesn't look that way, and it's probably more likely, I suppose, that this is actually just got the thruster damage off by default. Is probably more likely, because otherwise I would think it would damage these, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong, so I don't know. The other thing I don't know is if there's actually a block in front of these thrusters or not. I don't think there is. I think it just goes to that point and then it merges in, because you can still see the thrusters, so... I do like this bow shape. I gotta give the bow some credit. And I believe in the description it was said that this is designed as a ramrod, actually, as well. I don't know if I'm using that term correctly. That's what I'm just calling it. I don't know that a ramrod was actually designed for boats or ships or anything like that, but kind of what it looks like, though. It's a pillar that's designed to pierce a ship's hull when you run into it, so ramrod. But full disclosure, pretty sure that's not what that term is for. I do like the drop section here, so it's designed also for boarding, so it's kind of like it almost kind of has a snowplow shape to it, but you can kind of see this is probably supposed to be teeth and stuff, I imagine. And I like the little hook on the front. But I do like that it has these drop doors here for boarding purposes, so all of your people would be kind of like up here waiting, and then when you actually hit the ship you can drop down and board onto it. I think that's pretty cool. I like that idea. With that, let's move on to the interior, because I believe we've pretty much covered most of the exterior features that I wanted to note. So let's go ahead and move to the interior. Alright, so there's a couple of places in the interior that I really wanted to point out specifically, but I do like a lot of the little subtle things that are kind of a pattern throughout most of the interior. One of them being this, using these half blocks to cover things up. Now I will say, I'm not picking up any glass here, so I don't know. I guess this area is not sealed, I suppose, though I don't actually see an airlock oh, this would be the airlock, I guess. if there's a vent. I don't see a vent. I don't know if this ship is 100% airtight or not. Interesting. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure. Anyways, but I like using this opening here as like you left a window, but normally you'd have to cover it up or it'd be a full glass window. I like the use of half blocks here. For example, if you were to put a window on the outside here, then you could still look out, but it looks a little bit more secure than if you just left it open. And I've seen that quite a few places throughout the ship where they use these kind of like ramp sections and things like that. The interior, again, pretty cool with the little emblem features and stuff like that. There isn't too much of note. I do like this half block with the LCD screen trick. It makes it look a little bit more like a TV hung on a some kind of unit as opposed to just being stuck to a block, which is kind of cool. But there's not too much in terms of design technique and style on the interior that is super noteworthy. There is some cool stuff like having this little feature in the middle with a turret and stuff and sealing it off with catwalk railings. That's kind of cool. I like the elevated ramp on the side. It definitely feels like something you've seen in real architecture where it's like a handrail or something in between two escalators, you know, that kind of, those kinds of architectural designs. I like this a lot, like the emblems on the side with a pillar in the middle. Even like you could take or leave the turret. The turret's optional, but I do like the emblems on the side. It does feel very like stuff you've actually seen in real buildings and stuff of people with their companies with their logos and stuff on the walls and things like that. I think that's really cool. This is the boarding area we saw before. Again, style-wise, not anything to note really. Not that that's a bad thing. It's kind of just there. It's, you know, standard blocks, nothing real fancy. Nothing real spectacular in terms of tricks and tips kind of thing to point out. The one area in the interior that I really wanted to take a better look at and note some things, though, is what I'm calling the conference room. I don't know what it actually is. Oh, and this is pretty cool, too, that, again, it's kind of got this little, like, weapons clearance outpost kind of thing here. So that's kind of cool. It looks like a bunker. Which is, we've got the slopes on the top, the slope tips facing up on the bottom with half slopes in the middle and corner tips on the side. It's a pretty cool design. I like it. It's simple, but it's effective. It does kind of give that pillbox bunker kind of look to it. But yeah, this area is the one that I thought was really, really cool for a couple different reasons. One, I like the use of coloring the glass. So that's something I didn't know for a very long time, that if you painted the glass, the frame actually matches whatever color you pick. Obviously, the glass won't change, but the frame does. And normally, I always colored the glass the same color as the wall so that it would blend in, it would just look like a window. But this is a really cool technique of actually coloring the frames opposite or in some matching accent color to your designs to give it a bit more contrast, and it makes it stand out a lot more too, which is very definition of contrast. But it's a really easy way to do it. It's not like you had to do some kind of tomfoolery or tricking or kind of trying to gimmick the game mechanics or anything like that. It's just paint it in your accent color. And it just makes it pop a lot more. And it also creates a clear border, which is kind of cool. So it gives it shape where it may not have stood out with its own shape. So you could actually use this and color certain areas and not color other areas if you wanted to actually try and make more of a specific shape out of it. But it gives it this kind of like, for example, I'll give you an example. You could have just as easily taken these 1x2 flat panels and put one up here, and it would have worked. You just had the whole area sealed in glass. But by using the color difference and then putting the side facing ones, or the corners, forget which ones these actually are, sides. So by using the side blocks, it actually creates that kind of peak cathedral roof type of shape, which is really cool. I really like it. It's a very simple technique, but very effective. I also like this. This is a use of interior pillars and a half block, and then interior lights to create kind of I'd say more of a modern chandelier kind of thing without having to do any small grid transitions or rotors or anything like that. You can just kind of make a simple one, which is pretty cool. Again, we've got the half slope blocks with the LCDs on them. Gives it a little bit more of a hooked up unit rather than just mounted on a wall. And then we've got a small grid table, which is really cool because again, it's making use of color rather than blocks. It's just coloring out a special area for each seat, putting an LCD panel there. I like the little nameplates. I think that's cool. And then the emblems on the table is another, yet again, a nice touch. And then you got this area too, which is pretty cool. We've got the 2x1 tips back to back. Rounded blocks, which is something you don't actually see used very effectively very often. And then the inverted round with the tips on the side and another emblem on the front. Gives it a cool kind of column pillar type of design, which I thought was pretty neat. The two biggest things I think of when I'm looking at this ship is I think if you're really trying to better your building design and learn some new stuff, I think this ship could show you a lot of how to use color and accent colors to create shape and contrast where there wasn't any if you didn't paint it differently. Like if this was all just a flat gray, for example, or a black or a white or whatever, there's some of these areas like the table, the windows, even the emblems wouldn't stand out as much. So I think color palette is really well showcased here. And again, I know some of this may come from Warhammer's design, some of this may come from the builder. I can't say where one starts and stops because I don't know enough about Warhammer. But like this could be done to match the color scheme of a faction or something, but still the point is still valid of the color contrast and stuff is really well done on this ship. You use a bright color for accent, dark color for, you know, your base color, and it really makes everything stand out. All these emblems, the stuff on the table, the LCD screens, the frames on the window, everything pops and you see everything where it's supposed to be, which is really cool. If you did everything as like this was dark black and then a couple shades lighter, it would still kind of stand out, kind of like the framing on the blocks, but not as well. So if you're looking for how to improve stuff, that's one big thing this build can show you is how to use accent colors and stuff properly to really make everything stand out, as well as simple design things like a uniform theme. For example, these emblem things, these arrowhead symbols show up everywhere. And they're used all over the place. They're used creatively. Some places they don't fit, so you use something similar, but it still kind of has a uniform theme. And it works. It's like this. They don't have them up on the side, like this over here and everywhere else, but they put them on the top, or rather the bottom. It depends on how you're looking at it, but you know, things like that. The uniform of the theme, I think, really helps this ship stand out as being very unique. So that's kind of, I think, my thoughts and points I wanted to point out about the ship. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, and I will see you all next time. Peace.